Welcome back, Broncos country. It's Let's Talk Broncos. Bree Mace, Joey Richards, Zach Seegers. Guys, the Dalvin Cook rumors, they will not end. There's a $7 million contract potentially on the table for him to return to the Vikings. There's been a bidding war. There's been teams, multiple teams interested. The Dallas Cowboys, who seem to be linked to everybody, the Buffalo
Everybody.
Bills, the Miami Dolphins. The Broncos twice have been linked by both Tom Pelissero and I forget who else reported it. But the idea here is that Dalvin Cook at some point in time is going to make a decision on where he wants to play. I think it's going to be in the dwindling hours of the off season. I think the sun's going to be setting and he's going to ramp up his market value enough that he's going to land somewhere, possibly with a contender. Do I think the Denver Broncos are at the top of that list? I don't know. They have an opening. There's running back concerns in that room. But one, can they afford the running back? And two, should they be utilizing those funds for a different, weaker position? I don't know, guys. Tell me how you feel. Peyton's got ties to Minnesota. He's had his eyes on Dalvin Cook. Where do you think he lands?
I think it's obviously Bree. I think it's going to be Miami. That's where he's going to end up going. I don't think his market's going to go up too high. I think that the running back market, it just sucks to be a running back out here. That's honestly what it is. It just really is not fun. Dalvin Cook has been and consistently shown that he's a really good running back in the NFL. This last year was the worst of his career, which is why he's getting low ball numbers. But even if he was going into a second contract, and was in his prime and going into a year where this was supposed to be a huge year for him, he would be getting low ball numbers. Teams just don't want to pay running backs anymore. Simple, plain as that. I think it's going to come down to, hey, these are two teams not offering me that much. I think he's going to choose between the Broncos and Dolphins. Ultimately, I bet you he goes to Miami. He is a Florida legend, high school football legend at Florida. A lot of people say he's one of the best, if not the best football player to ever play high school football in the state of Florida. He went to Florida State and he had a phenomenal career down there as a Seminole. I would be shocked if he doesn't end up as a Miami Dolphin. I seriously would at this point. I even this is just me just speculating, if I'm being honest right now. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him take less money to go play in Miami. They love him down there. They love him in Florida. It would be a huge hometown reunion if he went down there. The fans would love him. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, he ends up a Dolphin.
Yeah. I agree that he ultimately ends up a Dolphin. I don't think he's going to take less money to go there unless it's like less money for tax reasons. Like if he's comparing the tax rates and ultimately it makes sense to take a little less in the state of Florida than in the state of Colorado. I think he'd go there. But
It does.
the current, it does definitely. But I mean, like wherever that line in the sand is. I don't know exactly where it would be. But according to Jeff Darlington's most recent report here, it sounds like Dalvin Cook is holding back because he's not liking the offers that are currently on the table for him. Just not thrilled with the financial situation there. And so, yeah, he just wants that money. And I don't know. It seems like, sorry, I'm kind of spacey. The reason he hasn't signed so far, according to Jeff Darlington, is because he's not happy with the current deals out there. And so he's holding out until training camp in hopes that a better deal comes along. Like Joey, I think he's going to end up in Miami. I'd be surprised if a better deal just randomly came up out of the blue now. I think he'd take like some freak injury. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be doing any hometown discounts for Florida.
I don't think so either. And Pelissero said that the deal would be lucrative. That's a big word to be using for a contract for a running back, which makes me think, a discount's not on the horizon. What do you think, LTB community? Drop it in the chat. Search us over on Mile High Sports, YouTube or Facebook. We are live right now. Do it. Let's have a conversation about it because, I'm glad that the hours are dwindling on this conversation. I want to know where he ends up, but I think it would be pretty sweet if the Broncos had a secured option for running back one. What happens when Javonte Williams comes back? I have question marks surrounding that, but it leads us to our next bit of Broncos news, and that's the Hall of Fame semifinalists. Obviously, Randy Gradishar being on that list, Mike Shanahan, it's absolutely time for him to join those ranks. Dan Reeves and Alex Gibbs. Give me a breakdown. What do you think? Obviously, it's a shoe in here for Mike Shanahan. He's more than deserving of that honor. How do you guys feel about it?
He should be a Hall of Famer already. If you look at the Mike Shanahan influence that he's had around the NFL, it's like without question he should be in the Hall of Fame just off the influence, not even going off the resume and the success he had in the NFL. This is a 2-time Super Bowl winner and a genius on offense. You look at his kid even right now, guys. His kid's an offensive genius. His kid's coaching tree full of offensive geniuses. This guy has laid foundation down in the NFL. His legacy lives on to today because people are stealing what he's doing or bending it and making adjustments off of what Mike Shanahan used to do. It's without question. I think Mike Shanahan should have been a Hall of Famer already. Honestly, it's ridiculous when you look at some of the guys that were in before him. I think it's flat out stupid. Very not smart. I don't like it at all. People don't know what they're voting on. It's more of an indictment against the Hall of Fame than anything, if I'm being completely honest, that Mike Shanahan's not in right now. Seriously, you can look down at the list. I have no idea. What is the argument for him not to be in the Hall of Fame? I would love for somebody to sit me down and explain that to me. He's gone to so many Super Bowls. I said how many he won. He won twice. And then you start going down the list of his coaching tree. What are we doing out here? Mike Shanahan should definitely be in.
Yeah, the average Hall of Fame head coach has 2 championships, 7.8 playoff wins, 13.75 playoff games coached, and 145.79 total wins over the course of their career. Shanahan has the 2 championships, right? Has the 14 playoff games, 14 playoff games coached, so a little bit more than that average of 13.75, has won 8, so a little above that average of 7.8, and then shatters the total wins mark with 170 total wins. So just on resume alone, he is almost like exactly the average Hall of Fame head coach, what you expect a Hall of Fame head coach's resume to look like. And then you factor in how he has innovated and changed the game of football. The combination of what he was doing up front with the offensive line, with the West Coast passing concepts, was something the NFL had never done before, and it took the league by storm. It was a dominant schematic advantage. Look at Terrell Davis's playoff numbers from those Super Bowl runs. It is insane how it changed the math for those teams. And it's proliferated into today. Right now, it's more popular than ever. There's still defenses. Oh, goodness. They've had 30 years to try and come up with a solution to this, and they still haven't, which is why 12 of the current offensive play callers come off or can trace their lineage back to these Shanahan offenses.
Yeah.
Zach, you're talking about Hall of Fame averages for coaches there. He's one of only a dozen coaches to ever win 2 Super Bowls. So it's not like this happens frequently. It's not like it's a shoe-in prerogative. It is the ultimate standard for a coach like that. We've been talking a lot about Sean Payton and his culture and identity building. I think Mike Shanahan really put the Broncos on the map there. They were contenders each season, and they were always of notoriety in the best way possible. I think that if you're looking to reflect on what the Broncos have done as an organization since then, it's been in a lack thereof for a long-standing tenure. Obviously, you don't get coaches for around that long, 2 decades and plus some years with Mike Shanahan. Do we see a reinvigoration for, and is Sean Payton a Hall of Fame coach as it stands? Does he need a little bit more time?
Sean Payton's a Hall of Famer already. Yeah, that's already my take. I think he's already a Hall of Famer. The guy, a lot like Mike Shanahan, he's a genius. He's respected at what he does on the offensive side of the football. More than respected. He is a guy that, how many coaches, if we went down the list, would you trade that for a first-round pick for? That list might be even smaller. than the 2 Super Bowl. I'll be honest, it's crazy. There's not a lot of coaches I would feel comfortable trading a first-round pick for, yet I feel comfortable with Sean Payton. In the NFL right now, here's a question. What other coaches would you feel comfortable trading a first-round pick for? Because I think we're all comfortable here right now. Is there anyone that comes off the top of your brain as to who you would trade a first-round pick for as a coach?
Andy Reid.
Andy Reid, yeah. Andy Reid, but he
like
might
that.
even retire. I guess like there's Kyle Shanahan, would you?
Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan, there's like 5-6 guys.
I mean, Bruce Arians, if he wanted to come back.
I don't know, because I don't know if you put Belichick in there, but like Tomlin, I think you could make a good case. That would get you to like 4.
Wait. Why wouldn't we put Belichick there? I want to know. I want you to expand on it just a moment and we'll move on. I just thought that was an interesting point.
Post Brady, he's struggled a little, I think, which, hey, it's a quarterback driven league. I don't fault him too much for that. But then he's also the oldest coach in the NFL by a good bit. And he's had previous quotes about, I don't want to be like Marv Levy with the Bills, like being ancient on the sidelines. And who knows if he holds to that, but it does seem like he's getting, like you said it with Andy Reid. I think Bill Belichick even more so seems like he's getting to the end of the line.
Sure. Fair. We got to talk a little bit about, current Hall of Fame semifinalists, but there's a couple of Denver Broncos on this roster. Yeah.
Shoot, sorry, I didn't. I want to talk about some of the other semifinalists more because I have the Shanahan love, but Alex Gibbs too. One of these guys. So few offensive line coaches have made the Hall of Fame. Joey's shaking his head because he's a Broncos hater notoriously, but Alex Gibbs was the guy with Shanahan in the Raiders organization who were cooking up this zone offense, and then he came to Denver and ran it with him to its best version. Helped him win those 2 Super Bowls. Also was in Denver even before, or I guess back when Shanahan was there for his first stint too, working together and helped get them to a Super Bowl during that period. I think, if any offensive line coach is going to get in, Alex Gibbs is a guy who should get in. Dan Reeves, even more so than Shanahan, blows the averages out of the water. Not as impactful on the game, doesn't have the second championship, but like in terms of total wins, playoff games coach, playoff wins, conference championship wins is way above average. Also has a Super Bowl championship as a player, which is, I think, gravy on top of his case, was a pretty accomplished player. And then Randy Gradishar, it's a joke that this guy's not in. He's one of 10 linebackers with 7 Pro Bowls, 20 interceptions, and 13 fumble recoveries in NFL history. I believe the other 9 are in the Hall of Fame. He's got 2 first-team All-Pros. He's got a Defensive Player of the Year award and 7 Pro Bowls. That means the Hall of Fame for every other linebacker in NFL history. Any other linebacker in NFL history, if you make 7 Pro Bowls and win a Defensive Player of the Year award, you're guaranteed a spot in the Hall of Fame unless you are Randy Gradishar. It's a joke. He should be in.
East Coast bias. That is actually a thing with the Hall of Fame. I firmly believe that. When you start going down there, word to Asante Samuel. That East Coast bias, man. It's no, I'm kidding, but that it is a true thing when it comes down to the Hall of Fame. When you look at some of these other teams that have won multiple Super Bowls and the amount of Hall of Famers that have come off of them, it's a ridiculous list, whereas the Broncos just aren't that way. A lot of the teams where we are located, around where we are located, aren't that way. It just isn't. When you have most of the media in one place that grew up a fan of one area, you're going to get a lot of Hall of Fame votes.
I'm going to answer this question in the chat from Cal. He's asking if it's a Marvin Gaye shirt. No, it's a Steve Atwater shirt.
Which one would you have respected more, Kyle? Marvin Gaye? Or
That's very funny.
I guess it is pretty funny. I'll have to tell me he resembles him. But let's talk about ESPN releasing their rankings per positional group. We've got safeties and cornerbacks, but I got to go into the best safety in the league. Obviously, we're talking about Justin Simmons here. Zach's got a clip for us, and I'm going to break it down for you.
Yeah, Sean's been a pleasure to work with so far. I think the number one word, if I had to describe it in one word that I've used, is it's been really educational. I think the way that Sean has come in, you can tell, most of us have seen him from the outside looking in when he was with the Saints. And so him coming in, you could tell that he has a certain way he likes to do things, and he does it at a high level, and he does it really well. And the practices, the number one thing that I've noticed, as opposed to coaches in years past, is the practices have been really educational. I mean, he will stop practice and explain why that was good, why that was bad, and explain how that's burned him in a game or has helped him in a game, or he's seen how it's burned somebody else or how it's helped somebody else. And it really just gives you the picture of how important details are and how important details are to winning games. And that's been the most, just in the few months that I've had the chance to, be out there on the field and go through OTAs, that's probably been the most eye-opening aspect of coach.
Justin Simmons is fresh in a new system with a new coach, and he's yet to really taste a lot of what the Denver Broncos organization is known for, and that's a winning culture. Can they get back to that? The ESPN rankings that I was talking about has Justin Simmons, who I consider the best safety in the league, at third. Stylistic differences aside, guys, I want to know a little bit, because it's hard not to have that bias towards the Broncos. Justin Simmons, best safety in the league, falling in the ranking to number 3 after 3 consecutive seasons with 5 or more interceptions, missing 5 games in 2022. It's interesting. 2 spots. You've got Derwin James, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Simmons' intelligence on the field, his tireless work on and off of it, his leadership, his mentorship, just everything that he represents. It's really hard to see him coming down that list. Why do you think the other 2 safeties moved up ahead of him? And do you think that's a fair breakdown of Justin Simmons' place in the league?
I want Zach to answer this one first, because I'm going to be like the pessimistic realism guy on this take. So Zach, you go first. Tell me why. I know you had a tweet about it today. So just let the viewers know why.
Yeah, he's the number 1 safety. He had the best season of any safety in the NFL last year. I think that's the reason why. I don't get how you move Minkah Fitzpatrick ahead of him in this last season. Justin Simmons was the better coverage player over this past season. They both tied for the league lead in interceptions. Simmons did it in 5 fewer games. I think that's an arrow in his cap. Also, Simmons was voted by this same panel of people as the better player last season. And so I don't get what happened in the last year to make Minkah Fitzpatrick a better player when Justin Simmons just had, in my opinion, the best year of his entire career. If you want to put Derwin James ahead of him, I know some people are big Derwin James believers. And the big concern there is he just hasn't stayed healthy. Well, the last 2 seasons, he's finally stayed healthy. So if you're on this panel of NFL insiders, and the big concern last year was, hey, we haven't seen Derwin James really stay healthy. Now we have. I can see some people bumping Derwin James ahead of Justin Simmons. I don't get the rationale for bumping Minkah Fitzpatrick ahead of him.
I think that it just comes down to last year they pulled certain people, and then this year they pulled another group of people. I really think it's that close between these 3. I'm not mad at if you rank them 1, 2, or 3 in this. Honestly, I bet you if you were to pull them and you were doing a tier list, they would all be in the same tier list. They're all, it's 1A, 1B, 1C. You can make an argument for all 3, and I'm not really mad at it. And the reason why I'm not mad at it is because safety is one of those positions, guys, where it almost feels like if they're on the field somewhere and we don't know exactly what position they are, we're going to call him safety. This guy could be playing in the box 90% of the time. And if he's a little undersized, he's a safety. He could be playing nickel cornerback. He's a safety. He could be playing deep safe. He could be playing in a deep role, and he's still a safety. He could be playing, he could be anywhere. And if it just doesn't make sense to people, they're a safety. The reason why I'm really not mad at this is because while Justin Simmons and Derwin James are both listed as safety, on the field, they're really not doing the same thing. So it's what you value in your safety. It has nothing to do with who's really the best, because they're not asked to do the same thing. They're almost impossible to compare. It really comes down to what you value. So I think it makes sense for all 3 of those guys to be in that tier. I even think there's a lot of differences between Minkah Fitzpatrick and Justin Simmons. I don't think they're all that similar. All 3 of these guys, very, very different. Top at what they do is what I would say.
I could see that. Just to counter, and I think that's a fair point, Joey. What I would say is, I don't think that's the way these NFL people were using it. The quote here to support Minkah Fitzpatrick as the number one safety from the people he pulled is an NFL personnel director saying, best in the game, and it's not close.
For
And that's
Derwin?
where
But if you really value his skill set that much more than Justin Simmons, I could see you saying that. Like, if you're looking for a split safety system, you would obviously, if that's what you value, you would say Justin Simmons, it's not even close. Those other two guys aren't in his conversation when we're talking about that. But if we're looking for a versatile, a guy that can play the box, a guy that can play nickel, like Justin Simmons and Derwin James are really, really not doing the same thing almost at all. They
Joey,
are you skill sets.
Are you seeing that as the trend in the league defensive wise? Like, our coordinators going in more of that direction that just lifts James's style of play, his versatility with both Fitzpatrick and whatnot. Christopher Hart also says, good thoughts, Joey. So Joey Richards, best in the game, not even close.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Christopher. But anyways, do I think it's a trend? I really think people just get confused on what people's positions are. Like, you have these different things, like Alabama, they'll use a position called a star. When you go on Madden, do you ever see the star roll when you're flipping through the depth chart? No, that's not something you see. So in the NFL, we're listing them as safety. I don't really know if it's a trend. I think that the trend in the NFL, honestly, is that split safety scheme. But at the end of the day, this poll probably just comes down to who they're polling and what they value. That would be my take.
I like it. We're going to move on to the other Bronco that has been ranked. That's over in the cornerbacks. Patrick Surtain's the league's top corner going into 2023. That should come to no shock of Broncos country. To quote the ESPN article, I believe they said the hype is real. So Surtain last season was ranked 7th, which seems really low in comparison to the way he's been able to play, skyrocketing to the top. I got to say, it's really hard to deny the level of talent, his presence on the field. And I think you've seen a lot of the league adjust to Patrick Surtain being out on the field. Patrick Mahomes has been intercepted multiple times by PS2. His stats don't measure up, though. We've talked about this a lot on Let's Talk Broncos, because teams are choosing to not even target his direction. When you're shutting down an entire side of a field, you're changing the way the game is played. Talk to me about Patrick Surtain, top of the list, because I think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, just had some extra context to the stats you were mentioning there. Multiple interceptions of Patrick Mahomes, one of only 4 players to do that. And you mentioned how they aren't targeting him. The ESPN talks about how his target rate is the lowest among any cornerback with at least 200 coverage snaps. That equates to, like, are you a starting cornerback for 6 games? I mean, like 6-7 games, something like that. So a really broad sample set, and he is the best in the bunch. I think that's what I want out of my cornerback. Like, don't let targets go to that side of the field. Like you kind of said, lock down a side of the field. To kind of weigh on that Asante Samuel Revis debate, I lean towards the Revis side, and I think that's what PS2 is. Also, just a fun little thing in that article to hear all the top prospects going through the draft now are saying, I model my game after PS2. High-ranking NFL front office person described him as a complete corner, physical, technical, and versatile. He's a true matchup guy versus the best players, premium ability on press or off coverage, outstanding open field tackler, solid ball skills, plays with confidence, really, really smart, and plays disciplined so he doesn't give anything away. Like Joey was talking about how with the and I think there's a lot of merit to this point, but with the safeties, it's like, what flavor do you want? Do you want the split safety guy? Do you want the guy who can drop into the nickel? Do you want kind of the star linebacker safety hybrid who can kind of impact the pass rush game and make some splash plays in the backfield? At cornerback, I don't think it's like a what flavor do you want? It's like there's a guy who's the best at all of it, and it's PS2. Youngest guy to make Defensive Player of the Year at cornerback since Ronnie Lott, one of just 3 people to make first team All-Pro at age 22. Champ Bailey, it took him till his sixth season and his 8 when he was 26 years old. Patrick Surtain has done it at 22 years old and just his second season in the league. It's not crazy to think he could outpace what Champ Bailey has done in Denver by a good bit. And Champ Bailey's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So that's remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little skeptical about that just because I need to see the longevity. Like Champ Bailey is a guy that has been to the most Pro Bowls of any DB ever in the NFL. It's the longevity of how great Champ Bailey was. And honestly, he's underrated nationally for that reason. Like you see so many of these guys work their way in the Hall of Fame simply off of longevity. They were never the best at their position in the game, but because they did it for a long time, they made it there. Champ Bailey was the best at his position, or at least had argument for the best at his position. And he did it for a really long time at that elite level. I just need to see the only pushback I'd give there is I'm always a little skeptical about the guy's longevity because I've seen it so many times not happen, especially at a position that's reliant so much on athleticism. You need to be athletic to play corner. That is not something that you can give up on. It's not something that could go down. Like if your athleticism loses at all, your skill set along with that leaves along a lot of it. It's relying on it. It's very technical. It's also very athletic. You need a lot of athleticism to play it.
What's great about this ranking, though, is it talks specifically about this being a ranking for the year alone, not necessary for longevity reasons. So when you talk about the runners-up in Jalen Ramsey and Sauce Gardner, what is it going to take from them to overtake Patrick Surtain in the years to come? Because that's something that I'm interested in knowing, because I think he separated himself quite swimmingly from the rest of the pack. Zach, I see your hand up.
You're muted.
I just wanted to respond to Joey there. So I agree. I think what makes Champ Bailey, and his peak was insane, but what makes him one of the best of all time, pairing that peak, is the longevity. Still, though, he only made first team All-Pro 3 times in his career. And Christopher Hart's citing some stats in the comment section. He could have made it maybe more times than that, but end of the day, only made first team All-Pro 3 times. Right now, and to your point, the cornerback has more variance than just about any position in the league. But right now, I would be pretty surprised if Patrick Surtain only finished his career with 2 first-team All-Pros. I just don't know who's going to be stealing those votes from him right now, because the old guard is kind of on its way out, and I feel like Surtain's ushering in the new guard. Maybe it's some guy who's in college right now, like Kool-Aid McKinstry or something. But I think there's a good chance for Surtain to just rack up some first-team All-Pros, be on like the all-decade team, which I don't think Champ did. And again, it's a high-end projection, but I think it's going to be a conversation. And no disrespect to Champ, I just think it's crazy the trajectory he's on already.
I have one more little okay, I'm going to add on to this real quick. When we're comparing 2 completely different eras, you also have to incorporate who are they competing against, especially in these all-team things for that position. There is no Darrelle Revis in the league right now. There is no Charles Woodson in the league right now. When you start looking at the corners, they were a lot. It's right now in the NFL, it almost feels like it's a battle for that number 1 spot. When you really look at the list came out. We saw it. We had a rookie and a sophomore at the top of our cornerback list. If Darrelle Revis was in his prime right now and he was in his 4th year, we're not even having this conversation. And it's something that just would not happen, because you're going to give the benefit of the doubt the guy that's done it 4 years in a row. You're going to give the guy that you already know is a future Hall of Famer the benefit of the doubt for these first-team All-Pro votes.
How can we expect Champ Bailey to beat out Samari Rolle, or the legendary Sam Madison? Like that. We don't have cornerbacks like Sam Madison and Samari Rolle in today's NFL. That's who he lost out to in year 2. But here's beat out Jalen Ramsey. You beat out Jalen Alexander, first team All-Pro.
Zach, you have to very much respect these voters to say that those guys were actually better than him those years. Let's actually go through that. Were they actually better? That's a conversation that needs to happen. I just won't put that much emphasis on an all-team pro vote when I don't agree with it. That's the main thing. If I don't agree with it, why am I putting so much respect on it?
You weren't watching the 2000 Washington football team and Champ Bailey and know that he was better than those guys back then. to combat your argument that like it was just a ridiculous glut of cornerback talent, I think that combats it. I think those were like, you know, they're very good quarterbacks. They're all timers. Sam Madison, yes, was a very good corner, but like you just beat out Jalen Ramsey and Jair Alexander, who are also great corners. I don't think I look at the guys Champ Bailey lost out to in 2000 and go, yeah, just the crop of cornerback talent in 2000 was just so much better in 2022. And therefore, it's not as impressive an achievement. Like
I think
Patrick
it's more
Surtain had to go
narrative.
against
Is my
less
argument than anything, Zach. I think it's more narrative. I think it's a
What's
lot
the
more
narrative that's
than-
aiding PS2 that couldn't aid Champ Bailey?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, PS2 is getting more love of any Bronco nationally than I've ever seen. Like
When he was in Washington, Champ was in Washington, a top market, a bigger market than Denver when he was missing out on these things. So
like
I don't think
2
we can
years.
argue.
Sure. I
When we're
guess.
talking
Like,
about
Oh,
who
I,
was
I think
missing
you guys
out on
could.
them.
I think you could argue. I think you could argue for
Yes.
15 to 20 minutes more. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into the meat of the rest of our program because it's a great conversation. So when we leave here tonight, I think you should jump in the Discord and you should have a conversation along with us. Also, comment
Yeah,
on
I'll
the
tell
show
you
when
about
we
it.
post the clip so we can talk a little bit more about this because I think it's an important conversation. I just can't do it anymore. I was getting a little bored, had to hit the timer because we're going to move on over to red flags of the Broncos 2023 season. Let's talk about it, guys, because there's a couple of things on this list that we have to decide what's the biggest concern moving into 2023. Zach started last time. Joey, I'm going to throw it over to you. What's your biggest red flag for the Denver Broncos this season?
My biggest red flag for the Broncos this season is their front seven. I think that the front seven on the defensive side of the ball is the big worry there. I worry about the depth throughout. I think the starters look good on paper. You know, Baron Browning coming back from injury, is he going to play? I have faith that Jonathan Cooper can be a guy that goes in there and does a pretty good job. But can Randy Gregory stay healthy? What happens if there's an injury across the interior defensive line? You lost Deshaun Williams. Who is going to come in and replace him? First off the bat, you know, you have a Wazirike and Matt Henningsen, but what have they proven to this point? They're really just kind of names and interesting names, but they're really just names at this point. They need to prove more to be that guy. Across your linebackers, I think the linebackers are okay. I don't think you have a stud in that linebacker room yet, though. I think that our rookie, Drew Sanders, he could definitely end up becoming that guy, but will he? That's another thing we have to figure out. There's just a lot of question marks as I list those down, right? And every single position group across that front seven that scare me. It doesn't seem very, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like there's something that I can for sure bet on across that front seven, especially when you're switching to a completely different defensive scheme with the defensive coordinator that I'm not very confident in. So it is a little scary. That's my biggest red flag for the Broncos this season.
Yeah, it's hard to point out like who you feel really confident in that front seven. Like I feel good about the off-ball linebackers. I think at the end of the day, they'll probably have two good starting off-ball linebackers in that front seven. And beyond that, I frankly don't know. Like, I think Randy Gregory will be good when he's on the field, but as I keep saying, he's never played 500 defensive snaps in a season. Baron Browning, I think we keep seeing the flashes of it, but will this year be the year he finally puts it all together? Who knows? I say finally like it's been forever, but he's only been at edge 2 seasons now. And he's dealing with knee problems during the offseason, which is going to limit his reps. I have a hard time putting a lot of faith in Frank Clark. The defensive line is Zach Allen and the late round picks from last year. It's hard to put a lot of faith in those guys. Yeah, I fully agree with Joey. It's that front seven's shaky. I think that's the biggest one for me.
Yeah. If everything goes right, it could be really good. I do think that, like, if Baron Browning came back from his injury, really great. If Randy Gregory stayed healthy. But when you start to add this up, it's like, oh, everyone needs to stay healthy. Everyone has to take that next step up. It becomes a little spooky.
Joe, you stole the words out of my mouth. My next question to the both of you was, it feels like a lot of what we were predicting during the end of last season, that the injury bug and the injury concerns the Broncos are one step away from losing key components across the board, specifically front seven, where you could find a massive hole that leads to the detriment of the entire defense were somebody to go down, because the replacement factor there, the depth there may not be exactly where you want it. So with injury concerns being an issue for the past handful of years, how close are the Broncos? I mean, this is SOS levels. This isn't just red flags.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I don't ever think, Bree, that there's a situation where you can rely. Every single team deals with depth issues at a certain position, but you don't like to see it through an entire group. And that's kind of what we're seeing with the Broncos right now in that area. It's just really hard to bet on in the most physical sport you can possibly play, I think, in the world, one of them. NFL football, with these supreme athletes running 100 miles per hour at each other, that injuries will not happen. Come on. Let's be realistic here. That just won't. You can't bet on it. You need to have solid depth. That's why it's important for you to hit on your draft picks in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, all those rounds to get those depth pieces. They may not even become starter level, but you need to have players that can come in and fill a void. And I'm having a hard time saying that the Broncos have those guys up front on the defensive side of the ball.
I think it leads into mine. My biggest red flag is going to be injury concerns from the postseason to this season, because they racked up during the offseason as well. You've had some questionable conclusions to be drawn from what has happened to the team every time they start racking up injured reserve players. Not to mention what is to be expected from players returning from injury. I'm going to throw out Tim Patrick again. I mentioned it in today's episode, but I've also used it as the X factor in a recent episode of the Let's Talk Broncos, because I think it is it's wildly imperative that certain players return to form, or at least as close as possible. Javonte Williams, the list goes on and on. You can't even name them all. Caden Stearns, Justin Simmons had injury concerns. There's things that need to happen, and you can't afford to lose anybody this year, and injuries just happen. As you said, Joey, it's a physical game. It's a physical sport. The biggest red flags are, is there enough of the depth on the roster? It's a pretty talented roster, ranked 13th in the league for ESPN's rankings of how talented the roster is. Does that include depth? Does that include enough resources to make it deep into the year and then deep into the playoffs if they were to make it that far? I don't know. I think that it's a little bit of a level of concern when you talk about how many key roster members on this team are returning from injury and have to play every single game. They have to start 17 games. They have to do it. And Randy Gregory is on that list as well. Zach, I'm going to start with you. How do you feel about injury concerns as the biggest red flag for the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, I think it's a huge one. It's happened, I don't even know how many years in a row. 3 now, at least the last 2. And it's a thing where I think it keeps compounding year over year. Like when you have these ligament tears, you're more prone to suffer them again. And I don't know when it'll turn around for them. But yeah, I'm definitely concerned about it. I do think Sean Payton's harder offseason practice will be interesting to monitor, but heck, they were getting injured under Vic Fangio. They got injured like crazy under Nate Hackett. Maybe that doesn't even have an impact. Right. But yeah, they gotta. I don't know. It's a nightmare.
Good luck having to turn around one of these days.
I don't know. Does it? Because it feels like the Denver Broncos sold their soul for Super Bowl 50. Something has happened. Something has led us to this downward spiral. And I know lots of teams have had much longer tenures of suck, but I'm not happy that my team that I happen to root for is heading into a decade plus, because when it reaches that point, then we're in a little bit of a concern pattern. Zach, I'm going to ask you though, give me your biggest red flag for the season.
Yeah, my biggest red flag for the season right now, it kind of ties in some with both of yours. How much the Broncos are relying on a lot of uncertainty just across the board, like top to bottom, is very, very concerning to me. You look at quarterback, like I think that's kind of an unknown commodity right now. I don't think any of us would be surprised if Russ is in the bottom half of starters in the league. And I also think there's a outcome where he's in the top half, thanks to like Sean Payton finding the fountain of youth or whatever. Same thing goes for Javonte Williams. I don't think we know what Javonte Williams is going to be this upcoming season. To some extent, I think that's true of Tim Patrick. To some extent, I think that's true of Jerry Jeudy. We have no idea what Garrett Bowles is going to look like. I keep talking about the fractured leg thing. I think that's super concerning that he's kind of just expected to be the week 1 starter. I think there's a little bit of that with Mike McGlinchey, not so much. Definitely, there's a lot of that with Lloyd Cushenberry. I think there's some of that with Quinn Miners. So it's like a lot of spots on your offense. And then you go over to the defense. We already talked about the front 7. You can talk about it on both edge spots, all along the defensive line outside of the Zach Allen spot. You can talk about it at corner, opposite Patrick Surtain. Like Damari Matheson, Riley Moss are both, as we've talked about on the show, kind of unknown commodities still. It's just, and so many of those bets are like, ooh, Garrett Bowles is probably not trending the right way. You know, like Russell Wilson probably not trending the right way. Cush probably not trending the right way. D-line not trending the right way. Edge not trending the right way. So it seems like all these things that are like, ooh, that's uncertain, more likely than not are going to break bad. And it's like every position on the roster. It's terrifying. I think it could be, I don't know. It just seems like they're relying on a lot of coin flips to fall their way. And some of those are not going to go your way. And you're going to be left with gaping holes at positions of need, or at premium positions, rather, not positions of need, gaping holes at premium positions.
By the look on my face, I think I'm just flabbergasted because we're right where we didn't want to be. But it's an interesting concept. We did have a comment from a listener/viewer over on the Mile High Sports Twitter. Dylan over on Twitter said special teams is a major problem until it finally isn't. They finally made a legitimate attempt to address it, but I got to see it on the field. Guys, is it not the lesson to be had here, though, is that we have a lot to see play out? New leadership, new coaching, new roster, new scheme, new system, new everything. New special teams is going to make a difference. Yes or no? Why or why not?
Yes. And the reason why, Bree, is because they've actually made investments in their special teams. Their draft picks, investments in special teams. Their coach they hired, investment in special teams. The returners that they've added, investment in special teams. All it's really going to take is you investing in the thing, and it's going to turn out better. That's what's going to end up happening for the Broncos. I think this is going to be the best special teams year in a while for the Broncos. I think I can say that pretty confidently. I really do. I really do. I mean, when you look down, Riley Moss projects as a very good special teams player. Not Alex Singleton, but he does project as a very good special teams player. Drew Sanders projects as a good special teams player. You added 2 punt and kick returners in Marvin Mims, and I'm forgetting the cornerback's name right now, who's a good guy too that we added, the cornerback. But I think they're both going to beat Montrell Washington out for the returner job. I think the Broncos are setting themselves up for a good special teams year. What is that cornerback's name? I'm going to lose my mind.
Tremont Smith.
Tremont Smith. Thank you.
Yeah. I fully agree. I will be stunned if Sean Payton allows these special teams to be bad. I don't think that is something he'll allow. I think he will sooner go back into retirement before the Broncos special teams are bad. They were consistently good in New Orleans under his reign. The last 5 years that he was there, they were a top half of the league unit every single time, with 3 of those years being in the top 10, 2 in the top 5 in terms of special teams DVOA. I don't know. I think he's done a good job maintaining that unit. Though, as I'm looking, the early years were a little rough in New Orleans, so maybe it will stay rough in Denver. I was giving Sean Payton a little too much credit at the top of my statement. Recently, he seemed to figure it out, but early on in New Orleans, it was bad. I think that's maybe credit to needing the right guys in the building, but I don't know. Michael Westhoff is the most legendary special teams coach in the business, and they have him as a consultant. It's hard for me to analyze the special teams too hard, but I feel like a lot of positive indicators are there.
That's great. I'm going to challenge Joey on the investment spectrum, because if you think about it, there's been some investments made, and they did not they didn't return.
The 2022 draft strategy was let's draft 7 special teamers.
Wait, what did you say? Can you repeat that?
I said the 2022 draft strategy for them apparently was just let's draft 7 special teamers. That annoyed me at the time, and it has not worked out. Bad strategy drafting guys with they'll be special teams guys.
Yeah, we need to stop draft or hiring these stupid coaches. I think.
Oh my god! No. And is that your? Oh, okay, yeah. Joey. Stop. It's time for everybody's favorite part. You can't talk about coaches right now. You got to give us the question of the day.
Okay, guys. Who at last pod I asked you guys who was your favorite defensive play caller? Everyone agreed it was Vic Fangio. So, who this time is your favorite offensive play caller for the Broncos of all time?
Teddy's birthday, so wish him happy birthday.
Vic Fangio is my favorite defensive and offensive play caller. I'm just going to give him basically the.
And Mike Shanahan can't be included.
Why?
Why can't Mike Shanahan be included?
Because we're just all going to pick the same thing. I want it to be interesting.
Okay. Well, then maybe you should pick
I'll give you the right
answer.
No. You guys don't get to control Joey's question of the day. This is my segment. Let's start there.
Let me answer your question. Peyton Manning. Because there's no way Adam Gase was running that offense. I refuse to believe Adam Gase was running that offense. I'm saying it was Peyton Manning.
All right, there's one correct answer here.
Who is
Who is it?
It's Gary Kubiak. You guys are
that was going to be the one that I threw out there.
All you guys are ridiculous.
I removed the right answer you guys provided, and then you didn't say my right answer. That's some nonsense.
Cal says it's a dumb rule. Well, and I hope it's in agreement with what I think is a dumb rule. So
listen, it's not Cal's question of the day. It's not Bree's question of the day. It's not Zach's question of the day.
That's fair. We're going to change it. Season 2 coming up for Let's Talk Broncos. You're going to want to keep a close eye over on our Twitter as well. If you feel so obliged, go on over to the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube and Twitter. Follow over there, subscribe, like the video, share the video, tell your friends, join the Discord, follow us on social media because we got big things coming. It's going to be a fun season 2 here for Let's Talk Broncos. Guys, where can everybody find all your stuff?
Find me at JR Drafts on Twitter. Find me at Joe_AY, Joe A, with another underscore that end it. Threads. Again, my biggest thing that I'm trying to do even more than, you know what? Go follow me on Threads even more than subscribing to the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube at the moment. I'm trying to get more followers than Bree and Zach on there. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Yeah, that's all. Where can they find your guys' work?
Find me over, that was absolutely ridiculous, but go over to YouTube and look up Let's Talk Broncos. Still, all this stuff, we're getting geared up for the season. I can't wait for it. Dang, what else? Mile High Sports, I've got some buff stuff coming out. I'm excited about. And then, yeah, that's just about it. Go over to Threads at Zach Seegers, all one word, no underscore. On Twitter, there's the underscore between the two.
I made my social medias all the same handle across the board, so you can find me everywhere. Bree Maces 303. Don't follow me on Facebook. I won't respond to the request. It's nothing personal. It's just I got family over there. But I will tell you, fun stuff coming up at the end of the month. I'll put out an announcement. I don't know when, but stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me here. Listen to me on the Fan Cave. Catch me talking Broncos. Joey.
I'm going to argue with Zach Seegers in the Discord after this about the whole Patrick Surtain, Champ Bailey thing. And if you would like to participate in that, you can find us. I'll drop the Discord, DM me on Threads because I want you to also follow me there.
You got to drop it on Twitter.
So anyways, that's all I got for today.
That's all Joey's got for the day. See y'all later. Bye.